her son was underage yet, but he wanted to go out to the war, and his brother joined him. So please keep my sons together. So then it went all the way to the Secretary of the Army, and he wrote back, and assured my mother, says, we cannot promise you, but we'll do whatever we can to keep your brother and your sons together. That letter became famous because by the end of the war, of World War II, it had 22 endorsements because it was against military policy to keep siblings together. After the Sullivan brothers, 5 brothers from Iowa were in the Pacific, and they were on the same boat, a destroyer. And when that boat went down, all Sullivan brothers went down with it. So in one boat being sunk, it took 5 brothers from the same family, and because of that, there was military policy not to keep siblings together. So it was, but my mother said that my younger son is not of age and has to have my consent to join the military, so please keep them together, because I want my older son to be with his younger brother so that they can take care of each other. And so it was that during World War II, we were probably the only 2 siblings that got to serve together. And every time they tried to separate us, we presented a letter from the Secretary of the Army promising our mother, that they would do what they could in the U.S. Army to keep us together. So that's the only distinction that I have from being in the military in World War II. We had a letter saying they'll keep us brothers together, and we went through 3.5 years of military through World War II. We were separated. So that's my only distinction of having served in the military, is that I got to serve with my brother. We slept at the bunk next to each other. We served in the bomber crew, and we sat next to each other. We went in together, and we came out together. And during that distinction, we had the reputation of code talking, because on those missions we had also the opportunity to break radio silence. And those of you who have been in the military know that on a bombing mission, there's radio silence, because the Germans were very good at decoding anything, and they didn't want, the Americans didn't want them to know who we were, how we were, or where we were going, or anything. So we break radio silence, and we talk crow. And that's why we were reputed to have been the code talkers. We didn't talk code at all. All we did was talk Crow Indian on the airwaves, and we have radio operators all over that part of the country wondering what was going on, because they never heard the Crow language before. When we were talking with other groups, we come up with things that are unique, and that were kind of different from other people. We are different from the Indians of Western Washington, where I come from. The Crow tribe has over 10,000 Indians, 10,000 members.
I was wondering if you had ever met with the other servicemen that were also called code talkers, and what was your feeling about the government waiting so long
The ones that started that was in World War II. The Americans were driven out of the Philippines, and when they evacuated Manila, the Americans had a National Guard unit that was from Montana and Idaho, and they were the last ones to stay at Bataan while the rest of the American troops left and the Japanese came. And the Japanese were very good at decoding any kind of a code that the Americans would come up. But they found some Navajos who were in the unit, so they left some at Manila while the rest were trying to get out of the Philippines. And they put radio signs, and they spoke Navajo. And the Japanese never decoded the Navajo language. So from that, anytime American Indians could use their own tribal language, we were encouraged to do so. And so it was that my brother and I were in the same unit together. They simply doesn't be great radio signs, and we talk Crow.
Thank you so much for coming here. My name is Patricia, and I'm named after a teacher from the village that my mother is from. I have a home in Adak, and the Japanese did land in Adak. My people were thrown off the islands. And when I heard that you were coming here, I thought that was so nice that you took time out to come here and share with us that I wanted to give you a gift from Alaska. This is polar bear, and the inside is seal. And then this is I'm an artist. This is a drawing I did of my daughter when she was a little girl. She's now 45. And she's in education. And then, of course, I wanted to give you tobacco.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
And it's from way up north. We use it for decoration. If you do Christmas, you can hang it on your trees.
Okay.
It's priceless.
Thank you very much. I will treasure that.
So she has met with some of the other Navajo code talkers, but I don't believe ever during service. They were in the air, and the Navajo code talkers were mostly on the ground, and most of the other folks credited with code talking were ground troops. To our knowledge, the air radio silence has only been done by the Two Crows, but there is legislation, as you know, that hasn't actually been passed. It hasn't gotten through. It went through the House, but not through the Senate. So Dad, one of the things we didn't mention in his introduction is that he worked at the highest levels of the U.S. government. So the patriotism goes very deep with him. So to get him to say, I'm not sure, to get him to speak negatively about the U.S. government is often against his intuition. He's had presidential proclamations. He has awards from the Pentagon. But Dad, they want to know, how does it feel? What does it make you feel like to realize that all the unique things in speaking native language still has not been recognized today, or that it took so long for the Navajos to get recognized?
Well, I think it's rather unique because the military discouraged the use of Indian languages because 1800s were the Indians. So the Indian language was an enemy language. So they didn't encourage the use of the Indian languages, except they found out that the so-called scouts could communicate quite freely without the enemy knowing what they were talking about, even though it would be another Indian tribe, because other Indian tribes don't understand another language. So that there are over 200 languages in this country that are spoken by Indians that are not English language. And those speakers talk to each other without any danger of anyone decrypting what it is that they're saying. And so it was that when my brother and I were in the Air Corps, and we break radio silence, they said we were talking code, but we're not talking code at all. We're just visiting in the Crow language. And the Indians, the Indian language was unknown to the Germans, so they couldn't decode what we were talking about.
Are there any other questions?
I'm wondering if there's like a distinction between knowing your own language and speaking English, and like if that's like, you know, your cultural memory, like is that you're taught to like your ancient language? You know what I'm trying to say? It's kind of hard to say. Just like, what's the difference between someone who knows their own native language and someone who yeah, like there's.
Ideas on the importance of the language, historical,
As you suggest, the language and culture go together. And once you know that culture, you begin to understand the languages a lot better. Because we find non-Indians learning the Crow language, but they never learn the culture. So that we have stories that tell us sometimes funny things, sometimes tragic things about the misunderstanding that occurs because of difference in language. Because they've studied the language over and over again, and the early missionaries would try to do away with the Crow language. They try to teach them the English language and sometimes Latin. And they taught the Indian students how to talk Latin, how to talk English, and try to keep them from talking Crow. And they found that it didn't work. When I first went to school as under 10, we're not allowed to speak Crow on the playground. We had to speak English. And none of us in the first, second, and third grade could speak English anyway. So we called ourselves the silent children, because we're not supposed to be caught speaking Indian on the playground. So we'd speak Crow, and then when the teachers come nearby, we'd try to talk English, but we didn't know that much English. And so it was that we went through, and I was fortunate that my parents spoke English, and we Crows we students as children were not supposed to understand English, so that my parents, when they wanted to leave us someplace and go away by themselves, would talk English, and they say I learned to talk English just by eavesdropping. So they try to go someplace